Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. I'm very excited for today's video because it is one that I've been wanting to film for a while, but just kept getting pushed off. So it has felt like the summer of green eyeshadow and green eyeshadow palettes. It feels like every major release that I've been excited about, and a lot of people have been excited about, have been greens and green eyeshadows. And I've seen so many comments that are like, why would you buy that? This palette, this one's better. These are identical to this one. And so I wanted to sit down and actually see how similar these palettes are, and then, looking at the differences and similarities between them, which one is best for you, especially if you're someone who only really wants or needs one of them. And if you're new here, welcome. My name is Colin. I'm a non-binary Latinx scientist and lover of makeup with a definite soft spot for indie makeup and high-end makeup. And you will mostly see indie makeup here today, but you'll see both. And I tend to take a pretty analytical approach to my content, my reviews, my makeup collection as a whole, and I have new videos every week, so I'd love to have you subscribe. So, I have a handful of palettes here, some old, some new, mostly new, to try and see how similar are these palettes and which one is the right one for you. I have videos on all of these on my channel, so I will try to link them all in the description box so you can look at if you want more swatches or anything like that. I'll have all of that linked down below. As far as the rest of my makeup goes, in case you are interested, as always, it'll be in the description box. I just filmed a let's play with makeup, trying new makeup kind of video. It was longer than I thought it was gonna be, but used some new products and some things that I'm still trying to figure out my opinion on. So I am wearing the new Fenty Eavesdrop Stick and the new Haus Labs concealer. This is the second time I've worn the concealer, and so far it is amazing. I'm really, really loving it. And then on my eyes, I have a couple of the palettes that I'm going to talk about, plus something else. So in that video, I tried the new Kosas palette. This is the Kosas Undressed eyeshadow palette. It's their very first eyeshadow palette, and they did send this to me in PR. This launched a couple days ago as of filming, but this was my first time trying it out. Really like this. It's mostly mattes. It's a very neutral, everyday kind of palette. It's meant to be for those people who don't really wear a lot of makeup, I think. Because like I showed this to my sister-in-law when she was over the other day, and she was like, that is my perfect palette. She was so excited by it. I did try out the mattes and the shimmer, and then because I'm talking about the green palettes, I wanted to add a little bit of something. So I added a shimmer from one of them and a little bit of the dark matte from another one. So it's a combination of Kosas and this little stack of eyeshadows right here. Oh, and before I go further, one of the other things that I did try again, tried it a handful of times, but today was the first on camera, is the new Melt finishing powder. So it's a glowy, it's an oil controlling glowy powder. I'm still trying to work out what I think about it, but I am wearing that finishing powder all over, in case you're wondering, in case you want to let me know what it looks like on camera. Also, before I forget, I did have to wear my frog earrings today. My best friend got me these for Christmas, maybe? I don't remember, but either Christmas or my birthday last year. But they're little froggies. The back legs are separate and hang out the back of your ear. I wear them all the time. Really love them, but I felt like since I was doing a green-themed video, I had to wear my frog earrings. Okay, so like I said, I do have some old and new palettes here, but it does feel, it has felt like the summer of green eyeshadow. So I got 4 new green or green leaning eyeshadow palettes this summer. So it does feel like a lot. It does feel like a lot of the big releases, like the late spring through middle of summer, were green, and now we're starting to move into the fall tones. But I also think of these as earthy and green and still kind of what I want for fall. So I figured this is later than I meant to, but it's still probably applicable, because most people don't buy everything or at launch. So in case sales start coming up for, well, it's Labor Day right now, but in case sales start coming up and Black Friday, then you can, start having an eye on which one of these might be best for you. So I think in launch order, we had the Stone and Rock palette from Oden's Eye. This was part of 2 palettes that came out. Really enjoy the Oden's Eye formula. This is a very green palette, as you can see. The other one is more cool tone neutral. I think that came out before this one, and there was the Extravaganza palette from Trixie Cosmetics in collaboration with Laganja Estranja. This is still available currently as of today, 20% off, but I think that ends today. So sorry I didn't get a chance to film this last week, but had allergy issues, my eye was swollen, couldn't wear makeup. But this is kind of rainbow neutral. So you've got a neutral quad, a green quad, and then this trans colored quad. So it's very cute. A little more primary. Then we've got the Nomad Cosmetics Okavango Safari palette. And I do have a video. This one I was given in PR. I do have a couple, well, at least one video, I think maybe 2 on this one. And then we had the Natasha Denona Yucca palette, which I do have, I think, 2 videos on this. So I saw these 2 compared a lot and people saying that they were identical. Oftentimes when I see people say things are identical, they are very much not. I saw people bring this into that and say that this one is also identical. I didn't see people mention this one, but I did want to bring it up. And then a couple older palettes that I felt are comparable and I did want to show side by side, do some swatches, are the Kaleidos Flower Punk, because you might already have this. This does have a few greens here in that like olivey green section. And then, sorry, there's too much stuff around me. The first one that I thought of when I started seeing all of these green and olive palettes, Melt Gemini. This is the newer version of it that I got last year. Really, really love this. Neutral, olive greens. There's definitely a theme here. Okay, so what I think I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put my camera pointed down, facing onto my table, and I'm gonna do these side by side so you can kind of see, and then we can swatch similar looking shades and kind of get a feel for them, and then we'll come back up to my face to wrap things up. Okay, so welcome to my table and welcome to my arm. So here are the palettes. I'm gonna put these side by side, especially these new ones. So here is the Nomad palette, or not Nomad, here's the Oden's Eye palette, the Natasha Denona, and the Nomad palette. So these are the ones I saw compared the most, and I did do some swatch comparisons, talk about this in that the videos that I did on them before, but I did want to talk about it again here in this dedicated which palette is best for you video. Okay, so here are the palettes. I think of these as distinct palettes, and I think the most distinct is, just from the looks of it, the Oden's Eye. The Oden's Eye definitely has some neutrals in it, but it is much more green and has a wider variety of green. I will recap this again at the end. I think of the Natasha Denona Yucca palette as more of a olive palette, and some of those are olive neutrals, some of those are olive greens, but it's olives. This is a mix of neutral and green, and then here you've got neutral and green, but a little bit more olive specific leaning. I think it's pretty clear when they're all laid out like this that you can see some of those nuances and differences. Like if you cover up Willow, which is teal, and Calathea, which is green, the rest of these aren't really, like that's a bright lime green, that's like a more mustard shade, but the rest of these are neutrals. They just have an olive undertone to them. This has the warm row, the cool row, the green row. This has a lot more variety of green. This is literally just olive and warm neutrals, kind of like this, but with more green. So let's do some side-by-side swatches just so you can see if that is helpful, and I will have timestamps, obviously. Okay, so because the Trixie Cosmetics palette only has a few greens, I'm gonna swatch those out and then we'll see how they compare. I think these are pretty different from the others and a different kind of vibe, but I did want to include it because it did come out around the same time and it has some greens. So there's this bright lime green. You've got this darker green here. That's a little bit more blue based than yellow based, like the lime here. And then we've got the green shimmer. And then we've got a yellow shimmer, which none of the others necessarily have. And you can see that is very yellow, very metallic. So here is the Trixie palette swatched out, at least the greens. So there was the lime, the more true green, like slightly teal leaning, the more teal shimmer, and the yellow shimmer. You can see it's a nice little green quad, green yellow quad. I don't think the rest of these really have that many comparable shades. Like there is this lime shade here, Camu Camu. Also I apologize for my chipped nails, but you can see it's much more yellow than the, what shade was that? Green Crack, yeah. It's much more yellow lime. Not at all really comparable. It's almost basically just a yellow with a hint of green versus this lime. And then you've got this Nomad more lime matte right here. It's a little similar, but still like a little less vibrant. If I don't really have room next to it, I'll just put it here on the palm of my hand. You can see it's a little different. It's a little less vibrant lime and a little bit more muted lime. Like this is like neon lime and this is a little more earthy. Like a hint, there's a hint of olive to it. Hope that is coming across on camera. And then I think the other bright shades are, we've got this bright shade here and this bright chlorophyll shade here. I'll just do the brights on my hand. So this is chlorophyll from Kaleidos. That's like neon yellow green. And this is the one from Madness. And that's even more olive. I would say chlorophyll and Camo Camo are the least olive. They're like more yellow. This is more true green lime, and these two are a little bit more olive. So the Nomad and the Odens are the closest, but they're still different. There's more yellow to this. There's more green to this. There are very distinct, you know, colors here. And if I want to compare like the other teals, I would say this is slightly, especially on my olive undertone, this green is pulling a little bit teal. So if I grab the other teal shades, which are Willow and Cheer, I think is how that, it's hard to read from far away. You can see a bit of difference. I'll do them next to the shimmers here. So there is Willow, slightly more blue, and there is Cheer, which is even more blue. Like that doesn't even look green to me. That is just a really dark teal / blue. None of the other ones really have a teal shimmer except for this multichrome here leans teal, but it's going to be obviously very different. Put it right here. I do like that they include multichromes in these palettes, but you can see they are a little thinner, and I am starting to get some hard pan there, I think. So that is a downside to these, but that is a very pretty teal to green to gold, which is very different from any of the others. None of the others really have a multichrome like that. And like the Nomad has this, so we don't really have a pure yellow shimmer anywhere else, but there is this shade in the Nomad palette, which is like a light, more pale gold olive. The others don't really have this. I would say this shade is just bright olive gold. I think that's the closest, but it's far more texturally interesting much more single shadow territory than just a standard metallic. These don't have any. This one does have this like neutral, but those are all very different. There's the Nomad Shimmer. These ones, people did complain, like these ones with the swirls and stuff. I don't think they have hard, some people said they have hard pan. I don't think they have hard pan. I think just the pattern themselves means that they are harder pressed. And there is a difference. Hard pan is a reaction to the oils in your skin and it like literally sealing up. That's just a firmer pressed shadow. Here's the Kaleidos, one of my favorite shades from Kaleidos. And then here's that Oden's Eye, which you can see is just like a pale, yellowy champagne. More like just champagne with that. I think there's a little bit of yellow there. And then I have shimmer everywhere, but I'm going to ignore that for now. When we look at the rest of these, I mean, there's this, but that's like copper. You know, there are some coppers up here. This doesn't have any coppers. These don't have coppers. So if you want, you know, rose gold or copper, you've got them here in the Nomad. Or if you already have Gemini, you already have a copper in Gemini. I just realized I was watching those off camera. I can't see what I'm doing very well. A lot of people complain about the melt shimmers, but they're not, you know, they're not this, but they are still really pretty. I don't think there's anything quite comparable to this shade from Nomad. This is just like a nice, good, true green. You can see it's more green than the one from Trixie and a lot less blue than any of these. So if I just put it, I'll put it here. You can see that is just a good true green. This has a little bit blue to it. This has even more blue to it. This is just green. And I don't think we really have a good true green matte in the Oden's Eye, and we definitely don't in the Natasha Denona. Okay, I'm gonna go wash off this first set of swatches and I'll be right back. Okay, so next I wanna do the olive tone mattes just so you can kind of see that there actually aren't that many olive greens. If you want really olive green mattes, I'm gonna say go with Gemini. You can see it has multiple there, but let's do the olive green, olive-y shades from each palette so we can kind of see. So do Natasha Denona first. I would say all of these have a bit of an olive to them. So we'll do Tipu and Acacia and Citrine. You can see they're more earthy, neutral, but still olive. These are my kind of neutrals. So you've got Tipu. They don't swatch the best. And there's Acacia, which is a little more green to it. Some people said that these were identical, but in my video you can definitely see this is like a hint of olive. This one's a little more, this one's definitely greener. And then that I would say is a pale true olive. That is Citrine. Not really sure why she called it Citrine, especially since she has a shade called Citrine already. But whatever. The new Natasha Denona mattes do not swatch well. They perform just as well, but I've noticed they do not swatch well. And then we've got this Game Reserve shade from Nomad. This was one that I compared in those other videos. You can see it's a little less olive. It's got a little less of that yellow and olive than this, but it is, you know, kind of similar to these. It's a little bit more a little bit more green than these, a little more olive than this one, a little more yellow than this, but not as much as this. It's kind of an in-between shade. It's really the only olive matte in here. And then we've got, I already swatched it, but I'll do Madness, and I'll do this shade right here. So we've got more like limey olive, and this more army green kind of shade. Again, different, even more green than any of the others. And then we've got Kaleidos, which is the most silky of all of these that I'm touching. Really beautiful. That I would say is definitely olive. That is just a good olive green. Much better swatch than the Oden's Eye. And then there's these ones from Melt. So we've got Mochi, Fire OG, and Leo. So you've got Mochi, which is nice and matte and smooth. Just doesn't want to swatch. Fire OG, which I would say is the closest to this Kaleidos. And then, what is this one? Leo. Leo, I would say, is the closest to Exuberance, but it's still a little darker and I think a better shadow than the Exuberant shade. But you can see, this is why I refer to the Natasha Denona as an olive palette, because it's not actually that green. Like, there's green in the shimmer here, there's green in the shimmer here. You've got Calathea, which is her cream to powder and is an olive. A little more on line with Leo or Exuberance, but like not quite. It's a little more gray to it. And it's a different formula. These are just olive tone shades. It's very earthy, it's very desert, it's very yucca. And then we've got those shades from Oden's Eye, but then you've also got that more blue shade, and then Nomad, and then, you know, here we've got Kaleidos and Melt. I think if you're going for olive green mattes, Melt is your best bet. If you're going for just olive tinted shades in general, Natasha Denona. And then a lot of them do have these warm neutrals, so let's just do those real quick. So we've got Jubilee over here, which I would say is kind of similar to, not really similar to any of these, but I'll do it next to Valley. You can see Jubilee is a lot, that's swatched nicely. There's Valley. Valley's not as dark. And then you've got this shade up here. A little bit more red, a little less yellow. And then let's do Polka Dot from Melt right underneath. And that I would say is a little bit more neutral warm, a little less yellow than that, a little less red than that. So no dupes. So I think these might have some similar vibes, but no direct dupes, and then what surrounds them is what's different. So I'm gonna go wash off my arm again, and then we'll be back to talk. Okay, so welcome back to my face. I just realized I didn't swatch all of the shimmers. Will do a few more shimmers here just to show you some differences and comparisons, but I think the overall idea of what I was trying to get at and what I'm trying to point out, it should be obvious from the swatches that these are all different, even if there are some like similar vibes. Some of the shimmers that I do think could be comparable are things like this Passion shade from the Oden's Eye. Could be, let's do that next to the Sun Gazer shade from Kaleidos, and then like Macchia from Natasha Denona. And you can see once they're on your fingers, I won't really say, I think The Nomad shimmers are really nice, but they're not as textured. These all have a little bit more texture to them. I'll do goals from Melt Gemini. You can see that green gold olivey tinged shadow, but you can see the formulas are very different. The Oden's Eye looks textured, but actually smooths out. This is the Kaleidos. You can see it keeps more texture. The most textured is the ones from Yucca. These new sparkling foiled shadows they're so pretty. They have a lot of texture and a lot of interest to them, but they're not chunky on the eyes. They do smooth out. And then this is more standard metallic. So I'll do these on the back of my hand. So there's the Oden's Eye. It's kind of sheer. It is really pretty if you want a sheer wash of color. Here's the Kaleidos. You can see it's a much thicker formula. And then we've got the Natasha Denona Macchia shade. And then the Melt. Just kind of standard metallic. So you can see how sheer the Oden's Eye is in comparison, which that could be a reason you want it. If the shimmers in it are more of that formula, I would say more sheer color with a sparkle. So if that is your vibe, the Oden's Eye is definitely a really good one. I think each of these palettes has a pro and a con. I'm happy having all of them for now. I might declutter some in the future. Honestly, I feel like if any of them were to be decluttered right now, it might be the Oden's Eye, just because I can get something similar enough with the others, but that's something for later me. I need to use it more to know if that's what I want. But the Tracy Cosmetics palette, kind of different from the rest, but it does have some greens did come out this year. I think if you wanted these really vibrant greens, you could see they swatched beautifully. They work well on the eyes. If you don't like olive, this is probably your best bet. The rest of these have at least some olive to them, that like which, you know, a lot of pale white people tend to refer to them as like grungy and murky. And some of them are murky, but some of them aren't. Like some of these shades I've seen people call murky and grungy and dirty are literally my transition shade, or someone darker than me's transition shade. So I think we should also be a little more cognizant of the words we're using, because I wouldn't really call something that is that transition shade on my skin tone dirty. It's just a neutral for me. So that's a separate topic. Language around makeup and the way we describe shades is very pale white people focused, and something I have mentioned in many videos. But if you're interested in a broader range of tones, you've got like true neutrals here, you've got the greens, and then you've got the bright pink and blue, you know, trans colors there. I think this is a really great option. If you are wanting more olives, the rest of these are a little bit better bet. Like I said, I think the Nomad is the best overall well-rounded palette. I think you can see in the swatches, like you have an olive tone matte here, you've got the lime here, and you've got like a true green here. The rest of these are cool tone neutral. So you've got like a more of a gray shade, a slightly olivey cool tone brown, and then a dark cool tone brown. And then you've got 3 warm tone mattes. It's the rose gold, the copper. You've got this really beautiful silver. You've got this really beautiful like dark bronzy brown. This is a little more versatile. This is a warm tone row, a green row, a cool tone row. I've said that many times in other videos as well. So if you want something versatile and you can switch back and forth and they look like distinct looks, they don't look like they all came from the same palette, I think this is your best bet. I love the Nomad formula. I did get this in PR, and I do have a discount code with them, but a non-affiliated discount code, but still, I think this is a really great palette, one of their best. I think the shimmers in their newest palette, the new Ghost Towns palette, are better than this, but I do like the shimmers in here. I think this is just a really good, well-rounded neutral with a pop of green, and I like that it's warm and cool tone neutrals. The Oden's Eye palette, this is the Stone and Rock palette. It does have some neutrals, so you've got this really warm neutral here. You've got a very cool brown here. You've got a black. This goes very deep because it has a black, and very light because it has a white. So if that's something that you really value, like Angelica Nyquist really loves having, like, you know, white to black or dark to light in a palette, I think this is a really good option. You've got a couple olive tone shades. You've got more of a teal shade. You've got more of a teal leaning multi-chrome. You've got an olivey shimmer. This one's more sage. So you've got a wider variety of greens. So if you wanted a green palette with a couple of neutrals, I think this is the one to go for. That also depends on if you like the Oden's Eye formula and all of that. But I think this is a true green palette. You've got olive green, you've got blue green, you've got a green multi-chrome, you've got sage green, you've got a wider variety of green tones in here. So if you wanted greens, I think this is a really good bet. If you're interested in olive tones in general, I would go with the Natasha Denona Yucca palette, especially if you are my skin tone or a little bit like my friend Ruby. She's a little darker than me. If you are in that complexion range of that like medium to tan range, I think this is a really great palette for you, especially if you have an olive undertone, even if you're pale and have an olive undertone, because, you know, Riley of Seeking Ships has a bit of a, Seeking Shifts, not ships, has an olive undertone, and she is fair-skinned. Olive undertones come in all skin tone, all skin depths. But this is an olive palette. Like, yes, you have a teal, you've got these pops of warm, you've got the peachy color and this more like yellowy mustard, and you've got this dark olive green. But the rest of these are neutrals with olive, like neutral, like olive, brown, just true olive. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second, but this is just more of an olive palette. I wouldn't call this a green palette. I would say this is kind of green for Natasha Denona, but I would say this is an olive palette. You do have, you know, Macchia, which is a pretty greeny olive shimmer, but you also have, you've got like more green gold. So you've got Plantasia, which is that like warm base with green sparkles. That's what I have on my lid. So I think this is, especially if you have an olive undertone, I've said this many times before and I will keep saying it, this is a really great palette. This is a really good neutral palette for people with an olive undertone or people around my skin depth. I love this. This is probably my new favorite Natasha Denona. I won't know for sure until I play with her. I need a nude more and, you know, form my thoughts over the coming months, but really, really love this. The shimmers in this are outstanding. I do know some pale people thought it was too olive and that some of these shades look too similar on them. And so I think if you're one of those people who doesn't really like olive tones, if you don't want that like greeny yellow and you think that these look too similar, I would just avoid it. It's $68, $69, somewhere around there. $70. Yes, you can save 15% with a discount code or something, but still, that's a lot of money. So if you're not in love with olive greens and olive yellows and olive neutral browns, avoid this. If you love those, you'll love this. And then for the two old palettes, this is still available, I think. I think this is a really great mix of tones still. I still really love this palette. Sun Gazer, as you saw, beautiful shimmer. These are the most silky of the formulas here. So if you, I know some people don't like that these don't really fit with these. I think you can mix them, but like, I wish Kaleidos was making more interesting things like this again. If you already have this and you were thinking of getting one of the other ones, but you weren't 100% sure, and you, I think, you know, maybe this is all you need. And then for Melt Gemini, I think this is the other olive palette in this bunch, like true olive palette, but this is more green than Yucca. So if you want more olive neutral shades, like olive earthy shades, go with this. If you want actual olive greens, go with this. Because you still have these warm neutrals. But again, also if it's about shimmers, these are more interesting shimmers, you get more of them. So I think what is right for you is really dependent on, you know, what you're in the mood for, what you're in the market for, what you wear. But I don't think you go wrong with any of these, but I think they are all distinct and different and not identical, as a lot of people have said. Okay, this was a longer video than I thought it was gonna be. I hope this was useful. Please let me know what you think in the comments, what you think of, if was it useful. I think as we're going into fall, I'm gonna be wearing these palettes a lot because this is my fall vibes, slash my all year vibes, but especially going into fall, I'm just excited to wear these. I'm excited to wear more makeup. It's been too hot. Yeah, let me know if you have these, what you think of them. Are you thinking of picking any up in like Black Friday when they're on sale? I'd love to hear your thoughts. As always, remember to like and subscribe, and I will see you in my next video.